So you want to know if Wriothesley is worth it? Well, worth it for you anyway. Since Wriothesley is a brand new character in the roster of playable characters in Genshin Impact, I think it's a wise idea to stop and think through this sort of thing in depth. After all, it's easy to get sucked into the hype. Besides, if you're free to play, you know how long it takes to say Primogems, and if you're not free to play, you want to be sure that you're making the right choice, even if you're planning on spending responsibly or only thinking about getting C0. So let's talk about it. This is the Is Wriothesley Worth Your Primogems deep dive. This video aims to bring you a deeper dive into the pros and cons of Wriothesley so that you can make a more informed choice as to if you want to be pulling for him or not. We're going to be going over a few things in this video. A brief overview into Wriothesley's playstyle and what purpose he serves in a team. This is to see if he fits into what you need on your account or if you just like what he brings to the table. Answering some commonly asked questions about him with sources, his current teams. This is to see if you have the characters on your account right now that do him the most justice, without having to suffer and frantically start pulling to get the right units. And his build. This is to see if you have what he needs or if you need to farm some more. This can also act as a personal preference checker to see if you like the domains that his artifacts are in, or if you like the areas in which you have to collect his materials in. Ready? Let's go. Wriothesley is a limited 5-star Cryo Catalyst user. He works best as a main Cryo DPS. Since he's a Catalyst user, his normal attacks deal Cryo damage rather than physical damage. This will be good if you want someone who can put out constant Cryo damage, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Wriothesley's normal attacks are essentially the bread and butter of his kits. Everything else about his kit exists solely to improve his normal attack damage. So it's important to note that his normal attacks are his top priority. His elemental skill allows him to sprint forward a little, where he will then enter his chilling penalty states. So what is his chilling penalty state? Well, not only does he become more resistant to interruption, but when his HP is above 50%, it will enhance his normal attack by increasing its damage. Now you might be thinking, wow, that's great, and it is. However, when each attack like this hits, it will consume some of his stamina. So there is a con there too, because if you use it too much, he may not have enough HP to fully take advantage of it. Since he works best when his health is above 50%, but his elemental skill drains his HP, you may think that you'll need to run a healer with him. But this actually won't be necessary. You won't need to run a healer with him because once you level him up past his first ascension, he'll be able to heal himself with his charge attack when his HP is under 60%. A self-sufficient man. We love to see it. His elemental burst activates his fighting gloves, which will allow him to strike directly in front of him. He'll then use icicle impact to cause AoE cryo damage. And after this mechanic ends, a blade will hit the opponent, dealing aligned cryo damage. So, TLDR, basically, he's a normal attacker. His elemental skill buffs his normal attacks, and his elemental burst deals a huge amount of AoE cryo damage. So to wrap this up in Razor language, he is a fully fledged cryo main DPS. He can buff his own damage and heal himself. So he'll be worth it for you if you're looking for a consistent cryo DPS. You'll probably especially want him if you don't have Ayaka. In fact, let's talk about that. If you're an Ayaka haver or an Ayaka wanter, and you're planning on getting Wriothesley, you may be questioning yourself, since both Ayaka and Wriothesley can put out constant cryo damage. They both work as cryo DPSs. So in this case, which cryo DPS would you want to pull for? Well, it's important to note that Ayaka can put out constant cryo damage, but ultimately she thrives as a burst cryo DPS. Meanwhile, Wriothesley is a normal and charge attack cryo DPS. Ayaka thrives in freeze teams, while Wriothesley will probably benefit more in melt teams. So they have similar roles, but it's not exactly the same. What is the best 4-star weapon for Wriothesley? As always, the Withsit proves why it's one of the best 4-star weapons in the game, so long as you have wished for this catalyst a few times and collected some refinements. I mean, the Withsit is nice, the only downside is that it is quite inconsistent in terms of the buffs it can provide. It's quite unpredictable, but it does have that crit damage, which is always nice to have regardless. Although another good option if you did need some crit is the Blackcliff Catalyst. What stats does Wriothesley ascend with? His ascension stat is crit damage, so that's also quite nice to bear in mind. let's go over some teams that Wriothesley can use. We now know what role he serves in teams, but let's talk about what kind of characters he can go with and see if you have the roster to do him justice. It's one thing to have your desired character, but it's a whole other thing to enjoy the team that they're being used in as well. So let's jump into it. Seeing as Wriothesley is a cryo DPS, he's able to take advantage of freeze teams, fridge teams, and probably more favourably melt teams. You'll want to run him in a team of support characters to help further buff his damage, as well as using elements that complement him like Pyro for melts and Hydro for freeze. So let's go over some team examples, except the list gets more expensive as it goes on. So starting with teams for beginners and free-to-plays, Wriothesley, Xiangling, Barbara and Lynette. For 4-star havers or low spenders, Wriothesley, Bennett, Xiangling and Sucrose, or Wriothesley, Xingqiu, Yao Yao and Sucrose. For 5-star havers, so these are some of his premium teams here, Wriothesley, Yilan, Shenhe and Kazuha, or Wriothesley, Nahida, Kokomi and Kazuha, or Wriothesley, Shenhe, Kazuha and Kokomi. Let's talk about his builds. We'll use this portion of the video as somewhat of a personal preference checker. After all, if you don't have a weapon that suits him, or you don't like farming the particular area or domain that he needs for materials and artifacts, it might soil your experience with the character a bit, or may make you put off building them entirely. So on that note, let's talk about materials. Talent-wise and leveling up-wise, all the materials are in Fontaine, so just bear that in mind if you're a newer or lower AR player. As for artifacts, typically, Wriothesley will be ran with 4-piece Mareschalty Hunter, though it is possible to use Blizzard and Echoes of an Offering. Both those sets are in the Strongbox, so while you're farming for Mareschalty Hunter, you can throw any reject artifacts from there into the Strongbox to use as a temporary build. The reason why you'll want to have a full Mareschalty Hunter set instead of the temporary build is because this set will be able to utilise his HP sacrificing mechanic to not only maximise his normal and charge attack damage, but also provide crit rates. For artifact stats, you're going to want the following: Sands, attack, Goblets, cryo damage bonus, and circular, crit, depending on what you need. And finally, let's go over weapon options. Weapon-wise, he'll want something with crit on it, ideally. So here's Wriothesley's weapon list, but the weapons get more expensive as the list goes on. 4 stars, Flowing Purity, the Whiff Sith, and Solar Pearl. 5 stars, Cash Flow Supervision, or Remembrance. Finally, here are my personal thoughts to wrap things up, though I will be going for him on his rerun, mainly because look at him. I have Ayaka, but I'm more than happy to get Wriothesley as well, because it's just nice to have a bit of variety when it comes to having fun with elements. The more characters you have built, the more fun Genshin is, at least in my opinion. But that's just me. I want to know your thoughts. Is Wriothesley worth the Primogems in your opinion? Are you going to be pulling for Wriothesley at any points? If not, how comes? If you've made it this far, comment a bird emoji, specifically this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.